Ruston City. Even the name sounded like fatigue and decay, especially here, late 80s bleeding into the 90s. The air hung thick with the ghosts of industry phantom scent of coal smoke clinging to brick, the damp chill rising off the cracked asphalt, even in the thick humidity of late afternoon. Rush hour was less a coordinated flow, more a frantic scramble, metal groaning, horns barking impatiently. This wasn't a city that waited politely. It shoved. It jostled. It mostly looked the other way. Down at the crossroads of Mercer and Elm, where the last textile mill had shuttered 5 years prior, leaving a hollowed-out skeleton overlooking the traffic, the usual chaos reigned. Commuters jammed the intersection, faces grim behind windshields splattered with city grime, exhaust fumes painting the air gray. A symphony of frustration played out. The hiss of bus brakes, the angry blare of a taxi horn, the low rumble of engines idling, waiting for a light that seemed perpetually stuck on red. And right there, amidst the impatient surge, under the flickering neon sign of a liquor store whose promises had long faded, something small crumpled. A gasp of motion, then stillness. A little girl, maybe 8, maybe 10, hard to tell beneath the dirt and the tangle of matted brown hair, lay sprawled on the pavement. Her clothes were thin, wrinkled rags, swallowing a frame that looked impossibly fragile against the hard indifference of the street. One hand was still curled tight, clutching a grimy, folded piece of paper, perhaps a discarded flyer, perhaps something more. No one seemed to notice, or perhaps no one wanted to. Cars swerved, tires screeching inches from the small form. A few pedestrians glanced down, then hurried on, eyes fixed ahead, shoulders hunched against involvement. Someone further back might have shouted something indistinct, lost in the urban roar. Trouble was like a contagion here. Best not to get too close. Indifference was the city's worn-out shield. A few doors down, the smell of frying onions and stale coffee drifted from Ellie's Eats, a narrow diner wedged between a boarded-up storefront and a perpetually overflowing dumpster. Inside, Ellie Vance, Ellie was wiping down the counter for the last time that day. The lines around her eyes seemed etched deeper by the relentless grind of Ruston City. Mid-40s, her movements were efficient but carried the weight of long hours and too many disappointments. The factory job had vanished years ago, along with the pension and the certainty. Now it was just this diner, scraping by, serving lukewarm coffee and greasy burgers to truckers and the few remaining locals who hadn't fled. She untied her apron, the faded floral pattern a stark contrast to the tired gray of her face. She glanced out the streaked window, ready to flip the closed sign, ready for the climb up the narrow stairs to the small apartment above, ready for the quiet ache of solitude. That's when she saw it. Not clearly at first, just a disturbance in the pattern. A small shape against the gray asphalt that shouldn't be there. She squinted. A bundle of rags? No. A child. Motionless. Her breath caught. Every instinct honed by years in Ruston screamed at her. Look away. Keep walking. It's not your problem. Someone else will handle it. But no one was handling it. Cars continued to edge around the small figure. People hurried past. That old familiar knot tightened in her chest. The one that whispered about risks, about getting involved, about the pain that caring could bring. She'd learned that lesson the hard way, hadn't she? Learned it when the factory gates closed, learned it even earlier, in a quiet hospital room that still haunted her dreams. Don't be a fool, Eleanor. But then a flicker. The child's hand, the one not clutching the paper, twitched almost imperceptibly. A tiny sign of life in the urban wasteland. Ellie's jaw tightened. Damn it. Damn this city. Damn the way it ground people down, made them blind. She threw her apron onto the counter, her weariness momentarily forgotten, replaced by a sudden sharp surge of something else. Anger? Maybe. Compassion? Perhaps. Or just the stubborn refusal to be one of the ones who looked away.
Muttering to herself, low and rough, not on my watch. Not today.
She pushed open the diner door, the bell above giving a weak, tinny jangle. She stepped out onto the sidewalk, ignoring the impatient honking, her eyes fixed on the small form at the intersection. She moved with a purpose that made a few people pause, curious now that someone was actually doing something. She reached the edge of the curb, looked both ways, and strode out into the slight lull as the light finally changed further up. Kneeling beside the child, the grime and the vulnerability hit her full force. So small. Face smudged with dirt, lips slightly blue. Ellie gently touched the girl's neck, searching for a pulse. Faint but there. The child didn't stir. Who was she? Where did she belong? The questions hung heavy in the exhaust-filled air, but answers weren't lying on the pavement. Action was. With a grunt, Ellie carefully scooped the child into her arms. She was lighter than expected, a bird-like fragility that sent another pang through Ellie's chest. She stood up, cradling the unconscious girl, turning her back on the now stalled traffic, on the curious, impassive faces. She walked back towards the diner, each step deliberate. She didn't look back. Inside, the relative quiet of the empty diner felt alien after the street's clamor. She carried her burden past the booths with their cracked vinyl seats, through the swinging door to the kitchen, and up the narrow, creaking stairs to her apartment. The city noise faded as the apartment door clicked shut behind them, leaving only the sound of Ellie's breathing and the unanswered questions hanging in the dim, quiet air. Inside, under the stark light of a single bare bulb in the tiny living space, the mystery only deepened. Who was this found child, washed up on the shores of Ellie Vance's weary life? The door had closed, shutting out the relentless groan of Ruston City, but the silence inside Ellie Vance's small apartment felt just as heavy. Outside, the day bled into a bruised twilight, painting the grimy windows with strokes of orange and purple. Inside, under the dim kitchen light, the questions Ellie had momentarily pushed aside began to surface, circling the small, still figure she'd laid carefully on her worn sofa. The child, this unexpected guest, was a piece of the city's debris washed up on her doorstep, and Ellie felt a familiar, unwelcome ache settling in her bones. It was the ache of responsibility, the ghost of past sorrows whispering caution. Hours passed. Ellie moved quietly, making tea she didn't drink, checking the locks twice. Finally, as the deepest blue of night pressed against the glass, the girl stirred. A small gasp, then wide, terrified eyes snapping open, darting around the unfamiliar room. She tried to scramble back, pressing herself into the lumpy cushions, her breathing shallow and fast.
Softly, keeping her distance. Hey now. Easy. You're safe here.
Ellie kept her voice low, calm, the way you might speak to a startled fawn. But the girl Maya, she would later learn the child called herself, only watched her, eyes huge and dark, tracking Ellie's every small movement. There was no recognition, only raw animal fear. Ellie moved slowly, deliberately. She brought a glass of water, setting it on the low table near the sofa, not pushing, not insisting. She brought a clean, damp cloth and gently wiped the grime from the child's face, revealing pale skin stretched tight over delicate bones. Maya flinched at the touch but didn't pull away completely, her gaze fixed on Ellie's hands. Later, Ellie heated some broth, the simple aroma filling the small space. She offered it in a mug, holding it out wordlessly. Maya hesitated for a long moment, her stomach betraying her with a low rumble, before her small chapped hand reached out, trembling slightly, and took the mug. She drank it quickly, eyes still wary, never leaving Ellie's face. Ellie watched, a knot of apprehension tightening within her. This felt dangerous, not physically but emotionally. Letting someone in, even a child this lost and broken, felt like reopening a door she'd fought hard to keep bolted shut since everything fell apart. She busied herself, cleaning the already clean counter in her tiny kitchen area, avoiding the direct weight of the child's stare. The silence stretched, punctuated only by the distant city hum and Maya's quiet sips.
Quietly, almost to herself, you got a name, kid?
Maya looked down into the empty mug, her tangled hair falling forward, hiding her expression. A tiny whisper emerged, barely audible.
Whispering, Maya.
Maya. Okay. I'm Ellie. This is my place. You fainted out there. In the street.
Maya offered no explanation, no reaction beyond a slight tensing of her small shoulders. The wall around her remained firmly in place. Ellie didn't push. Some silences, she knew, held stories too heavy to force into the light. The next morning, Ellie had to open the diner. Leaving Maya alone felt wrong, but bringing her down, that felt like inviting the world's judgment. She compromised, setting Maya up in a small booth near the back, away from the front window, with a glass of juice and a dry roll.
Stay put. Okay? Don't talk to anyone much. Just stay here. I'll be right out front.
Maya nodded, her eyes wide as she took in the diner, the worn counter, the red vinyl stools, the smell of coffee and frying bacon. She curled into the corner of the booth, making herself small. It wasn't long before the bell above the door jangled, announcing the first intrusion. Mr. Henderson, owner of the pawn shop down the block, shuffled in, his usual gruff expression firmly in place. He ordered his coffee, black, no sugar, then peered towards the back booth, his gaze lingering on Maya.
Morning, Ellie. Everything, all right? Saw the commotion yesterday evening. Heard shouting.
Wiping the counter, voice carefully neutral. Morning, Mr. Henderson. Just city noise. You know how it is. Coffee's fresh.
City noise usually don't end up in your back booth. Kid okay?
Meeting his gaze briefly, she's fine. Just needed a place to rest her head for a bit. Rough times.
Henderson grunted, taking his coffee. He didn't pry further, but his observant eyes took everything in Ellie's guardedness, the child's stillness. He represented the cautious curiosity of the neighborhood, wary but not immediately hostile. The hostility arrived later, heralded by the sharp, clanging ring of the diner bell. Brenda, from the laundromat across the street, bustled in, her gaze immediately snagging on Maya in the back booth. Her lips pursed into a familiar expression of disapproval.
Well, Eleanor Vance. Didn't figure you for the type to be running a halfway house now. Taking in strays? Got enough trouble paying your own bills, I'd reckon.
Voice tight, not turning around. Morning, Brenda. What can I get for you?
Oh, nothing for me. Just stretching my legs. Funny, isn't it? Things you find wandering the streets these days. Hope she ain't carrying anything, you know. Diseases. Or lice. Got enough problems in this neighborhood without adding more.
Turning slowly, her eyes hard. She's just a child, Brenda. And she's clean. Now, unless you're ordering, the door's right behind you.
Brenda sniffed, affronted, but clearly unwilling to push further against Ellie's sudden steeliness. She shot another venomous look towards Maya before turning and flouncing out, the bell clanging angrily behind her. Ellie let out a slow breath, her hands gripping the edge of the counter. That was Brenda, the voice of suspicion, the sharp edge of community judgment. Looking at Maya huddled in the booth, Ellie felt a wave of something fierce surge through her weariness. Protectiveness. It felt foreign, almost painful, dredging up echoes of a time when she'd had someone else to protect, someone she'd failed. She shook the memory away, focusing on the here and now. This silent, watchful child. This harsh, judging city. And the unspoken past that clung to them both like the ever-present city dust. The fragile peace of the small apartment felt miles away now, shattered by the first ripples of outside awareness. Keeping this child safe, Ellie realized with a sinking heart, wasn't just about providing food and shelter. It was about navigating a world that had little patience for the lost or the broken. That fierce protectiveness Ellie felt, that sudden surge of defiance against Brenda's venom, was a fragile thing. It flickered against the backdrop of her own exhaustion and the crushing weight of the unknown. Keeping this child, this Maya, safe from judging eyes and sharp tongues was one battle. Giving her a foothold in the world, a future, that was something else entirely. The name Maya felt temporary. Like the piece of scrap paper the child had clutched, it felt like something found, not given. Ellie found herself watching the girl in the quiet moments, the way she traced patterns in the condensation on her water glass, the intense focus in her eyes as she watched cars pass outside the diner window. She needed more than just a borrowed name whispered in fear. She needed an anchor. One slow afternoon, while wiping down tables, Ellie found her gaze lingering on a small, stubborn weed pushing its way up through a crack in the sidewalk outside. Pale green against the gray concrete. Tenacious. Resilient. An idea sparked. Later that evening, back in the cramped apartment above the diner, Ellie sat across from the child, who was meticulously arranging sugar packets she'd salvaged from the day's discarded wrappers.
Maya? Look at me a minute.
The girl looked up, her usual wary expression in place.
I was thinking. Maya's, it's a fine name. But maybe you need something new. Something brighter. Like Lily. What do you think? Lily.
Ellie said the name softly, testing it out. It felt strange on her tongue, hopeful in a way that scared her. It felt like a promise, a commitment she hadn't consciously decided to make. Lily. A flower pushing through Ruston City's grime. The child tilted her head, considering the sound. She didn't smile, not yet, but a flicker of something unreadable crossed her face.
Whispering, Lily?
Yeah. Lily. Suits you, I think. You're stronger than you look. Like those flowers that just refuse to quit.
Lily didn't respond, just looked down at her sugar packets again. But later that night, Ellie heard her whispering the name to herself in the near dark, a tentative sound like testing the fit of a new shoe. The act of naming changed something, subtly shifting the dynamic. Maya was a foundling, a temporary problem. Lily. Lily started to feel like hers somehow. And with that feeling came a fresh wave of fear. Ellie started bringing Lily down to the diner more regularly, keeping her occupied in the back booth with old magazines or letting her wipe down the salt and pepper shakers. This constant presence didn't go unnoticed. The whispers Ellie had sensed before became more pointed. Customers lingered a moment too long, their eyes drifting towards the back. Community scrutiny intensified. Brenda naturally led the charge. She made a point of stopping by almost daily, her voice carrying easily through the small space.
Still got your little project here, Ellie? Taking up space a paying customer could use. Ought to be careful, you know. Kids like that, from nowhere? They bring trouble. Probably got folks looking for her. Or maybe the authorities should be looking. There are places, proper places, for kids without proper homes. Not some greasy spoon diner back room. Doesn't seem fit.
Voice low and steady, wiping furiously at a coffee stain. Lily's fine right where she is, Brenda. She's not bothering anyone. And she's certainly not your concern. Now, are you buying something, or just blocking the doorway?
Sniffing disdainfully, just making an observation, Eleanor. For your own good. Wouldn't want you getting in over your head. Again.
The barb hit home, a sharp reminder of past failures Ellie tried desperately to keep buried. She watched Brenda leave, her knuckles white where she gripped the cleaning rag. Not everyone was hostile. Mr. Henderson sometimes stopped by, ordered his coffee, and would leave an extra nickel on the counter. Once he silently placed a shiny red apple on the table in front of Lily's booth before shuffling out.
Gruffly, nodding towards Lily as he left, seems quiet enough. Keeping out of trouble.
Small gestures, but in Ruston City they felt significant. They were acknowledgments, cracks of light in the wall of judgment. But the nights were harder. That's when the unspoken past Lily carried seemed to claw its way out. A truck backfiring in the alley below, the slam of a distant door, even a raised voice from the street. Any sudden loud noise could send Lily scrambling under the small kitchen table, trembling, eyes wide with a terror that seemed too old for her small face. The night terrors started soon after. Ellie would be jolted awake by a thin, high-pitched whimpering from the makeshift bed she'd made for Lily on the sofa. She'd find the child rigid, fists clenched, sometimes crying out indistinct words, caught in a memory Ellie couldn't access. In those moments, Ellie's own carefully constructed walls crumbled. She'd sit on the edge of the sofa, pulling the thin blanket tighter around Lily's shaking shoulders, murmuring useless reassurances.
Softly, stroking Lily's hair, shoo. It's okay. You're okay now. Just a bad dream. Ellie's here. You're safe.
She didn't ask what Lily dreamed about. She didn't pry into the shadows behind those terrified eyes. But holding the trembling child, feeling the fragile heartbeat against her own, forged a bond stronger than any name, stronger than Ellie's fear. It was a connection born of shared vulnerability in the lonely hours of the night. Slowly, tentatively, trust began to bloom in the daylight hours too. Ellie, wanting to give Lily something, anything, started an informal school in the back booth during the diner's slow periods. Using the back of old order pads and grease-stained menus, she'd carefully print letters.
Okay, see this? That's an A. For apple. Like Mr. Henderson gave you. And this is L. For Lily. See? Lily.
Lily watched with fierce concentration, her brow furrowed. She'd take the offered pencil stub, her small hand clumsy but determined, trying to mimic the shapes. Her first attempts were shaky, barely legible scribbles. But when she finally managed to trace the 4 letters of her new name, a tiny hesitant smile touched her lips, the first genuine smile Ellie had seen. It lit up her whole face, a brief, stunning flash of the child hidden beneath the layers of fear and grime. Ellie felt her own throat tighten. This small victory, this shared moment of learning, felt more real, more important than any judgment whispered across the street. Yet Brenda's words echoed. The system. Proper places. Ellie watched Lily carefully sounding out a word on the menu, a fierce protectiveness solidifying within her, mingled with the cold dread of reality. Giving her a name was one thing, teaching her letters another. But giving her a real future, keeping her safe from the shadows of her past and the cold mechanisms of bureaucracy, that felt like a mountain Ellie had no idea how to climb. That fierce determination solidifying in Ellie, the quiet pride watching Lily painstakingly trace her name on a napkin. It was a fragile shield against the harsh realities looming just outside the diner door. Teaching Lily letters felt vital, necessary, but Ellie knew, with a cold dread that settled deep in her gut, it wasn't enough. The world demanded more than knowing the alphabet. It demanded papers. Proof. A place within the system Lily simply didn't have. The realization grew sharper each afternoon around 3 o'clock, when the bell at the public school 2 blocks over would ring, releasing a tide of noisy children onto the cracked sidewalks. Lily would often stand by the diner window then, her small face pressed against the glass, watching them. Kids with bright backpacks, scuffed sneakers, laughing and shouting, clutching drawings or complaining about homework. They belonged to a world Lily could only observe from the outside. One afternoon she turned from the window, her usual quietness tinged with a wistful longing that tugged hard at Ellie's carefully guarded heart.
Ellie, do those kids, do they learn things? Like you teach me?
Hesitantly, wiping down the counter, yeah, honey. They go to school. Learn reading, writing, math. All sorts of things.
Can I go? Someday? To school?
The simple question landed like a physical blow. School. It represented everything Ellie couldn't easily provide: legitimacy, opportunity, a path out of Ruston City's shadows. It represented interacting with the very system Ellie instinctively feared. She knew Lily deserved it, deserved more than lessons scrawled on greasy order pads. But the thought of navigating that world, of exposing Lily and herself to official scrutiny, sent a wave of panic through her. What if they took her away? What if digging into Lily's non-existent past brought only more pain, or worse, danger? For days Ellie wrestled with it, the fear warring with Lily's quiet, hopeful gaze. She asked tentative questions around the neighborhood, her inquiries met with shrugs or warnings about child services. Finally, swallowing her pride and her fear, she sought out the one place that seemed to offer a sliver of possibility: the struggling community center down on Miller Avenue, housed in a former church basement. It was there, during a sparsely attended community outreach meeting about tenants' rights, that she encountered Sarah Jenkins. Sarah was young, maybe early 20s, her clothes neat, her expression earnest. She looked like she'd taken a wrong turn on her way out of the suburbs. She was explaining renters' resources with a hopeful enthusiasm that felt jarringly out of place amidst the weary cynicism of the attendees. After the meeting, Ellie hung back, twisting the strap of her worn purse.
Approaching Sarah hesitantly, excuse me? Miss Jenkins?
Turning, offering a warm smile, oh, hello. Yes, just Sarah is fine. Can I help you with something? Did you have a question about the eviction notices?
No, not exactly. It's something else. More complicated. It's about a child. A girl.
Her smile softening with concern. Okay. Please, have a seat. Tell me about her.
Ellie sat, perched uneasily on the edge of a folding metal chair in the dimly lit basement room. Explaining felt like walking through a minefield. She spoke haltingly, carefully omitting details, focusing on Lily's presence, her need for something more. She avoided mentioning how Lily came to be with her, the intersection, the collapse. Her fear of judgment, of consequences, was a palpable thing in the air between them.
She needs schooling, you know? She's bright. Quick learner. But she doesn't have the papers. No birth certificate. Nothing. I don't know where she came from, not really. I just found her.
Listening patiently, her expression empathetic. Okay. I understand this is difficult. Thank you for trusting me, Ellie. It is complicated without documentation. The school system, legally, they need proof of identity, residency, immunizations, guardianship.
Guardianship? I'm looking after her. Isn't that enough?
Gently, legally, no. For the school to enroll her, for any official services, someone needs legal responsibility. Without a birth certificate, establishing that is tough. We'd likely need affidavits from people who know you both, possibly even court involvement to declare her abandoned and grant guardianship. It's a process. A slow one.
Ellie felt a wave of despair wash over her. Affidavits? Courts? Sounded terrifying, impossible. Every step felt like another risk of losing Lily, of having her swallowed by the very system Sarah represented, however kindly.
Voice rough with frustration. A process? Seems like just walls. Walls everywhere. She's just a kid who wants to learn. What does a piece of paper matter?
I know it seems unfair, Ellie, truly. And it is, in many ways. These rules, they're meant to protect children, but sometimes they trap the ones who need help the most. But that doesn't mean we give up. It just means we have to be persistent. There might be options. Special programs, ways to get temporary documents, legal aid services that could help with the guardianship. Let me make some calls. Let me see what resources I can find for Ruston residents in your situation.
Sarah's idealism, her refusal to be immediately defeated by the bureaucracy, was a stark contrast to Ellie's ingrained pessimism. Just then, as they stood near the basement steps, Brenda happened to be walking past on the sidewalk above, peering down with undisguised curiosity.
Calling down, voice sharp. Well, looky here. Ellie Vance hobnobbing with the charity folks now? Trying to get a handout for that little stray you picked up. Some nerve.
Looking up, startled, then addressing Brenda calmly but firmly. Ma'am, we're discussing resources available to all community members. This center is here to help everyone.
Scoffs, help themselves, more like. Mark my words, Ellie, taking in riffraff only brings trouble. The authorities should know about this situation.
Brenda stalked off, leaving a poisonous silence. Sarah looked at Ellie, her initial empathy now mixed with a steely resolve.
Don't listen to her, Ellie. What you're doing, it's incredible. Let me help you fight for Lily. We'll figure this out. It won't be easy, but we have to try.
Ellie returned home that evening, clutching a piece of paper with a few phone numbers Sarah had scribbled down. Legal aid, a school district liaison. It felt impossibly small against the mountain they needed to climb. She found Lily in the back booth, carefully practicing her letters on a napkin. Lily looked up, her eyes searching Ellie's face. Ellie forced a small smile, pushing down the despair.
That L is looking real good, kiddo. Real good.
Quietly, can I go to school soon, Ellie?
Hesitates, then speaks with forced brightness. We're working on it, Lily. We're working on it. Got some folks helping us figure it out. For now, let's see if you can write diner. DINER.
Lily bent over the napkin again, tongue poking out in concentration. Ellie watched her, the conversation with Sarah echoing in her mind. Bureaucracy. guardianship, systemic barriers. Hope felt like a dangerous, fragile thing. But looking at Lily's determined focus, Ellie knew she couldn't let the walls win. The informal lessons in the back of the diner took on a new urgency, a quiet act of defiance against the system that threatened to keep Lily locked out. The path forward was shrouded in fog, but Sarah Jenkins had offered a compass, however small. Now came the slow, uncertain steps of trying to find a way through. Armed with a few phone numbers scribbled on a napkin and Sarah Jenkins's earnest promises, Ellie stepped onto the path of officialdom. It felt less like a path, though, and more like wading through waist-deep mud. Weeks bled into months, measured out in frustrating phone calls, long waits in sterile government offices under buzzing fluorescent lights, and forms, endless forms demanding information Ellie didn't have. Sarah Jenkins proved tenacious, a bright spark against the gray indifference of the bureaucracy. She made calls, translated jargon, and sat with Ellie through tense meetings with overworked clerks whose gazes slid past them as if they were invisible.
On the phone, voice patient but firm, yes, I understand the policy, but this is an exceptional circumstance. We have affidavits confirming residency. No, there's no birth certificate, that's the point we're trying to resolve. Could I speak to a supervisor? Thank you, I'll hold.
The first hurdle was establishing residency, proving Lily had actually been living with Ellie above the diner. This meant asking for help, something Ellie loathed. Sarah drafted simple affidavits, sworn statements, confirming they'd seen Lily living there consistently. Approaching the neighbors felt like walking on eggshells. Mr. Henderson, predictably, was reluctant at first. Ellie found him polishing the brass eagle atop his cash register at the pawn shop.
Mr. Henderson. Sarah Jenkins, that young woman from the community center? She said we need folks to sign a paper. Just saying they've seen Lily, seen the kid living with me. For the paperwork.
Squinting at the form Sarah had drafted, turning it over in his thick fingers, paperwork. Always paperwork. You invite trouble, Ellie, taking in strays. Told you that.
Voice quiet but firm, she's not a stray, Mr. Henderson. She's Lily. And she needs this. Please.
Sighs heavily, picks up a pen, all right. Don't need the whole life story. Seen her around. Quiet kid. Don't cause no fuss. Where do I sign? Just don't come crying to me when the real trouble starts.
Brenda, however, was another story entirely. When Sarah Jenkins approached her at the laundromat, armed with her clipboard and hopeful smile, Brenda folded her arms, her face a mask of indignation.
Sign something? For her? Absolutely not. I wouldn't put my name to anything involving that woman or that child she dragged in off the street. Probably stolen, for all we know. I've half a mind to call social services myself, tell them what's really going on. Someone needs to protect this neighborhood.
Voice calm, though her cheeks flushed slightly, ma'am, Ellie is providing a safe home for a child in need. We're simply trying to follow procedure to ensure Lily can access education and support. Your signature would simply confirm you've seen her residing here.
I'll confirm nothing. Get out of my laundromat. Go on, git. Before I call the cops on you for harassment.
Sarah retreated, shaken but resolute. Brenda's opposition was a venomous undercurrent, a constant threat. And it seemed Brenda wasn't content with just refusing to help. A week later, a stern-faced woman with a worn briefcase and tired eyes showed up at the diner during the lunch rush. Not Sarah, but someone official from Child Protective Services. Brenda had made good on her threat.
To the official, trying to keep her voice steady, look, I told you on the phone. I found her. She was collapsed. No papers, no name, nothing. What was I supposed to do, leave her there? Official, flipping through a notepad, voice clipped, Ms. Vance, harboring an undocumented minor without notifying authorities carries significant legal risks. We received a complaint regarding potential neglect and endangerment. I need to assess the living situation. Where is the child now?
Just as Ellie's panic began to spiral, Sarah Jenkins arrived, having been alerted by Ellie via a frantic payphone call. Sarah calmly stepped in, presenting the affidavits they had collected, explaining the steps they were already taking, her professional demeanor acting as a buffer against the official's skepticism and Ellie's rising fear. The visit ended inconclusively, with a warning and a promise of follow-up, leaving Ellie feeling more vulnerable than ever. Amidst this external turmoil, however, something shifted within the small apartment and the diner's back booth. Lily, perhaps sensing Ellie's fierce if terrified protectiveness, began to emerge from her shell. She started helping Ellie with small tasks, carefully refilling napkin dispensers, arranging ketchup bottles in neat rows. Her voice, though still quiet, grew steadier. She'd ask questions about the customers, about the city beyond their street corner. And in their evening lessons, her progress was undeniable. She could now write Lily clearly, and was slowly sounding out words from the faded menus.
Pointing at a menu, Ellie. Ellie. That's you.
A rare, genuine smile touching her lips. That's right, smarty pants. That's me. Now, what about this one? COFFEE.
The community, too, seemed to be undergoing a subtle recalibration. While Brenda continued her campaign of whispers, others offered quiet gestures. The woman from the bakery next door started leaving day-old bread on Ellie's doorstep. A couple of the regular truckers began leaving larger tips. Even Mr. Henderson seemed to thaw slightly, occasionally asking Lily, not Ellie, if she needed anything. It was a fragile, unspoken truce, a gradual acceptance forged in the face of shared hardship and Brenda's obvious malice. Then, after nearly 6 months of relentless effort from Sarah, countless calls, stacks of paperwork, tense meetings, came the first tangible victory. It wasn't school enrollment, not yet. But it was something. Sarah arrived at the diner one afternoon, waving a slightly crumpled official envelope.
Beaming, Ellie. Lily. Look. We got it. Temporary guardianship. It's official, Ellie, you're legally recognized as Lily's guardian, at least for now. And look at this.
She pulled out another card, laminated and new.
A provisional library card for Lily. Based on the guardianship papers. She can start borrowing books.
Lily's eyes grew wide. She reached out and took the library card, tracing her name Lily, no last name yet, but official printed beneath the Ruston City Public Library logo. She looked up at Ellie, then at Sarah, and the hesitant smile Ellie had seen before blossomed into a full, radiant grin.
Books? I can get books.
Voice thick with emotion. Yeah, kiddo. You can get books. All the books you want.
Ellie watched Lily clutch the card like a precious jewel. Temporary guardianship. A library card. Small victories, hard-won against the grinding gears of the bureaucracy, and the bitterness of neighbors like Brenda. It felt like solid ground beneath their feet, however small the patch. But as Ellie locked the diner door that night, she caught sight of Brenda across the street, watching them through the window of the laundromat, her expression unreadable. The victory felt real, but the shadow of Lily's unknown past, the shadow of Brenda's resentment, the shadow of the city's inherent precariousness, still lingered, long and deep. They had won a battle, but the struggle for a secure future was far from over. That small victory, the temporary guardianship papers clutched like a fragile shield, felt precious. But the shadows lingering over Ellie and Lily weren't just specters from the past. Ruston City itself was breathing down their necks. The late 80s slid towards the 90s, and the rust on the city seemed to deepen, flaking away prospects along with the paint on abandoned factories. Whispers of layoffs at the remaining plants became shouts, then silence as gates were padlocked for good. An economic downturn, cold and sharp as a winter wind off the polluted river, began to bite deep into the neighborhood. For Ellie's eats, the change was slow at first, then brutal. The usual trickle of regulars thinned. Truckers found cheaper routes or stopped running altogether. Locals pinched pennies, brown bagging lunches instead of splurging on a burger. Ellie started stretching the coffee grounds further, watering down the soup, her ledger book filling with numbers stubbornly refusing to add up. The cheerful, greasy spoon resilience of the diner began to look frayed, mirroring the worry etched ever deeper onto Ellie's face.
muttering, looking at a handful of bills, rent due Tuesday. Gas bill. Lord. Gotta make that last bag of potatoes stretch another week. Maybe skip the bacon order this time.
Lily, growing taller, quieter, watched Ellie with those observant eyes that missed nothing. The fear she'd arrived with had faded, replaced by a fierce loyalty and a worrying maturity. She saw the stress lines, the way Ellie sometimes just pushed food around her own plate at the end of the day. Without being asked, Lily started helping more. Not just wiping tables but scrubbing pots in the back, her small hands surprisingly strong, her silence industrious. She started taking the empty bottles from the diner to Mr. Henderson's pawn shop, returning with a few carefully counted coins.
Placing coins on the counter, Mr. Henderson gave me 50 cents for the bottles, Ellie. He said keep the change.
Looking at the coins, then at Lily, forcing a smile. Did he now? Well, that was decent of him. You put that in your pocket, Lily. For a treat.
No. It's for the electric. I heard the man yelling yesterday.
Ellie's forced smile faltered. Lily had heard the shouting match with the landlord's agent about the overdue rent. She'd heard the threats. The weight of it all pressed down, suffocating. The neighborhood, already strained, seemed to fracture under the pressure. Brenda, predictably, thrived on the misfortune. Her complaints grew louder, laced with blame.
To another customer, loudly enough for Ellie to hear, see? This is what happens. Whole neighborhoods going downhill. Folks like her, attracting problems. Bet the landlord wishes he'd kicked her and that kid out months ago. Bet we all do. Probably why business is so bad for everyone. Bad luck, that's what she is.
Ellie learned to tune out Brenda's poison, focusing instead on survival. But the kindness, when it came, was often quiet, almost secretive, as if acknowledging need was its own kind of vulnerability in Ruston. A bag of bruised apples left on the diner's back step. An anonymous envelope with a few crumpled dollar bills slipped under the apartment door. Mr. Henderson started over-ordering basic supplies, flour, sugar, and would leave the excess at the diner.
Gruffly, got too much of his stuff. Taking up space. You use it, Ellie, before it goes bad. Hate waste.
Voice thick. Thank you, Mr. Henderson. I don't know what to say.
Don't say nothing. Just keep that kid fed. She's looking thin.
But the small kindnesses couldn't hold back the tide indefinitely. The eviction notice arrived, stark white against the grimy apartment door. 3 weeks. Ellie stared at it, the official words blurring. Panic, cold and absolute, seized her. She spent sleepless nights poring over the diner's books, searching for a miracle that wasn't there. Sarah Jenkins tried to help, connecting Ellie with emergency aid programs. But the city's resources were stretched thin, the bureaucracy slower than ever.
On the phone with Ellie, sounding frustrated, the emergency housing list is months long, Ellie. Fuel assistance applications are backed up. I'm pushing, believe me, but everything's overloaded right now. Have you spoken to the landlord directly? Maybe negotiated a payment plan?
Voice flat. He won't talk to me. Just sends his agent. 3 weeks, Sarah. That's it. Where do we go? Back to the street?
The lowest point came during a particularly bitter cold snap. The heating in the old building sputtered and died. Ellie and Lily huddled in the apartment under layers of blankets, their breath misting in the frigid air. Ellie felt a despair so profound it threatened to swallow her whole. She looked at Lily, shivering beside her, trying bravely not to complain, and something inside Ellie broke. Not her spirit, but the illusion that she could handle this alone. That night, wrapped in blankets, sharing a meager meal of crackers and canned soup heated precariously on a single electric burner Ellie usually used for the diner, Lily reached out and took Ellie's hand.
It's okay, Ellie. We're together. That's warm, right? Being together?
Ellie couldn't speak past the lump in her throat. She just squeezed Lily's small hand, the simple touch a lifeline in the cold darkness. Their shared struggle, stripped bare of pretense, had forged something elemental between them, the unspoken truth of their reliance on each other laid bare. The next day, bundled against the biting wind, Ellie was packing their few belongings into worn cardboard boxes when a knock came at the apartment door. It was Mr. Henderson.
Heard about the heat. Landlord's a piece of work. Listen, Ellie, got that back room at the shop. Storage mostly. Got a cot in there, space heater works. It ain't the Ritz, but it's warm. And it's empty. You and the kid, you can use it. Till you figure things out. No arguments.
Staring at him, stunned, Mr. Henderson. I can't possibly.
Cutting her off, avoiding her eyes, ain't asking you if you can. Telling you. Place is empty. Waste of heat otherwise. Lock up when you leave. Bring the keys by later.
And just like that, he was gone, shuffling back down the stairs. Ellie looked around the cold, bare apartment, the eviction notice still taped to the door. Then she looked at Lily, whose eyes held a glimmer of relief. Shelter. It wasn't a solution, just a temporary reprieve offered with gruff kindness. They carried their boxes down the street to the pawn shop's dusty back room. It smelled faintly of old wood and metal polish, but the small space heater glowed orange, casting a welcome warmth. As they huddled on the single cot that night, listening to the wind howl outside, Ellie knew they had survived this particular storm, finding unexpected shelter in the heart of the community's complicated landscape. Their bond felt stronger, tested by the fire of hardship, but the future remained a vast, uncertain territory, still shrouded in the lingering shadows of Ruston City. That fragile stability, found in the dusty back room of Henderson's pawn, carried them through the worst of the winter and into a tentative spring. Ellie eventually found a new, smaller apartment nearby, just as cramped but blessedly free of the previous landlord. She reopened the diner, leaner now, quieter, but still serving coffee and a stubborn resilience. Life in Ruston City didn't get easy, it just became manageable. The years settled, one quiet season bleeding into the next. Lily, no longer the terrified waif Ellie had carried home, grew taller, her limbs losing their childhood thinness. She navigated the halls of Ruston Middle School with a quiet dignity, the provisional enrollment Sarah had fought for holding firm. She was a diligent student, absorbing knowledge like parched earth soaking up rain. The library card Sarah had secured became her most prized possession. Then came the recognition. An 8th grade essay contest. The theme, My Hero. Lily wrote about someone unnamed, someone who ran a small diner, someone who faced the world with weary strength, someone who offered shelter when no one else would. She wrote about quiet courage, about learning letters on greasy napkins, about being held during night terrors. She didn't use Ellie's name, but anyone who knew them, even slightly, would understand. She won first prize.
Reading from her essay certificate, voice clear but slightly shy, first place. Ruston City School District. Annual Essay Competition. Lily, it doesn't have a last name, Ellie. Just Lily.
Looking at the certificate, then at Lily, her chest tight with pride and something akin to fear. That's wonderful, Lily. Just wonderful. Your teacher must be real proud. I'm real proud.
The school was proud. So proud, in fact, that Lily's teacher, meaning well, shared the essay and a sanitized version of Lily's difficult background with the local paper, the Ruston Chronicle. Sarah Jenkins, still loosely involved as a mentor, had reservations but hoped positive attention might open doors. A few days later, a young, eager reporter showed up at the diner during the slow afternoon lull. Reporter voice energetic, Ms. Vance? Ellie Vance? I'm Dave Miller from the Chronicle. Your daughter Lily, she wrote quite the essay. We'd love to do a small feature. Inspiring story. Overcoming hardship, you know? Really resonates with our readers in these tough times.
Stiffening, wiping the counter automatically. Daughter? Look, Mr. Miller, Lily's, she's just a kid I look after. And we don't need any features. We like our privacy. Reporter, oh, come on, Ms. Vance. It's a great story. Kid wins citywide contest, tribute to her guardian, people love that stuff. Might even drum up some business for your diner here. Just a few photos, a quick chat? Voice hardening, no. Thank you. We're not interested. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do.
Ellie's abrupt refusal only seemed to pique the reporter's interest. He left, but a few days later, a short article appeared anyway, buried in the local news section. Local girl wins essay contest with moving tribute. It didn't name Ellie, referred only to a caring guardian. But it mentioned Lily by her first name and the general neighborhood. Ellie felt sick reading it, a cold dread washing over her. Exposure. Attention. The very thing she'd tried so hard to avoid. Her fears weren't unfounded. About a week after the article ran, Mr. Henderson stopped by the diner, his usual gruff demeanor replaced by something approaching concern.
Ellie. Got a minute? Need to talk. Private.
He led her towards the back, near the storeroom.
Fella was in my shop yesterday. Asking questions. About the neighborhood, about a girl named Lily. Said he saw her picture, maybe? Or read something, in the paper. Looked rough, Ellie. Asking if anyone knew where she came from.
Her blood running cold. What did he look like? What did you tell him?
Tall fella. Scar on his cheek. Looked like he'd seen the inside of a few bars, maybe worse. Told him I didn't know nothing. Told him to move along. But he was asking around, Ellie. At the corner store too. Smelled like trouble. Thought you should know.
Ellie leaned against the wall, her legs suddenly weak. Lily's past. It wasn't buried. It was here, sniffing around the edges of their fragile life. That night sleep was impossible. Every creak of the floorboards, every distant siren sounded like a threat. Who was this man? What did he want? Was he family? Or something more sinister? The uncertainty was torture. She had to tell Lily. She found her sitting at the small kitchen table, reading a library book, absorbed.
Lily, honey, we need to talk. Mr. Henderson, he told me someone was asking about you today. A man. Asking where you came from.
Lily looked up, the book falling slightly in her lap. The color drained from her face, replaced by the old, familiar fear Ellie hadn't seen in years.
Whispering, a man? Did he have mean eyes? A scar?
Heart sinking, Henderson mentioned a scar, yeah. Do you know him, Lily?
Lily nodded slowly, her eyes wide with remembered terror. She didn't offer details, didn't need to. The fear radiating from her was answer enough. This was it. The reckoning Ellie had always dreaded. For days Ellie lived in a state of heightened anxiety, peering out the diner window, jumping at every unfamiliar face. She considered running, packing their few bags and disappearing again. But where would they go? And Lily? Lily was finally putting down roots, fragile though they were. She talked to Sarah Jenkins, her voice trembling over the phone.
Oh, Ellie, no. This is what I worried about with the article. Okay, deep breaths. Does this man know where you live specifically? Henderson just said he was asking around?
I don't know. Maybe. What do I do, Sarah? Do we call the police? Go into hiding?
Calling the police might be risky without knowing who he is or what rights he might claim, especially with the guardianship still only temporary. Hiding maybe buys time, but it's not a solution. We need a plan. Maybe we need to face this. Carefully. Find out who he is, what he wants. Perhaps legal aid can advise on a restraining order if he poses a threat?
Face it. The thought terrified Ellie. But looking at Lily, who despite her fear seemed to be drawing strength from Ellie's presence, a different feeling began to stir. Not courage exactly, but a grim determination. They couldn't live looking over their shoulders forever. She found herself confiding in Mr. Henderson late one evening, after the shop was closed.
He's asking around, Henderson. Someone from before. Lily recognized the description. I don't know what to do. Run? Hide? Call the cops? Call that social worker?
Polishing a tarnished silver locket, not looking up, running don't solve nothing, Ellie. Just postpones it. Cops? Depends what he wants, what right he has. Social worker? More paperwork, more questions. Sometimes you gotta stand your ground. Find out what you're dealing with. Ignorance is what eats you alive. What's the kid say? Lily? She ain't a little baby anymore.
Henderson was right. Lily wasn't a baby. Ellie found her later, staring out the apartment window into the darkening street.
Lily. That man, the one asking questions. If he finds us, what do you want to do? You tell me. We do what you think is best.
Lily turned from the window, her expression surprisingly steady, though her hands were clenched tight.
I don't want to run anymore, Ellie. I'm tired of being scared. He can't hurt us now. Not really. Not while I have you. Maybe we should just see him? Find out why he's here? Then we know.
Ellie looked at the quiet strength in Lily's eyes, a reflection of the resilience she herself had fostered. The fear was still there, cold and sharp, but Lily's resolve solidified Ellie's own. No more hiding. No more running. It was time to face the shadows head-on. She picked up the phone, dialing Sarah Jenkins's number, her hand steady now. It was a choice fraught with peril, a step into the unknown consequences of the past colliding with the present. The choice was made, a decision forged in fear but solidified by Lily's quiet courage. Facing the shadows head-on, with Sarah Jenkins making discreet inquiries through legal aid and Mr. Henderson keeping a watchful eye on the neighborhood, they prepared for the confrontation they couldn't outrun. It came on a gray, drizzly afternoon. The man with the scar, Jake, Lily whispered his name with a tremor, appeared at the diner door, looking hesitant but determined. Ellie met him at the counter, Sarah Jenkins seated quietly at a nearby booth, a file open before her, Mr. Henderson ostensibly organizing dusty tools near his shop window across the street, watching. Lily stood slightly behind Ellie, her hand gripping Ellie's tightly, but her chin held high. Jake voice rough, uncertain eye. I read the paper. About Lily. She's my niece. My sister's girl. I didn't know where she'd ended up after everything.
Voice steady, cold, she ended up collapsed on my street. Alone. You weren't looking too hard then, were you? Jake shifts uncomfortably, times were bad. I wasn't thinking straight. But she's blood. She should be with family.
Stepping forward slightly, her voice clear and stronger than Ellie expected. Ellie is my family. She found me. She took care of me. Where were you? Jake stares at Lily, taken aback by her directness. Look, kid. I know things were messed up. But you belong with kin. It ain't right, you living here with a stranger.
She's not with a stranger. She's with me. And I have temporary guardianship. Sarah, show him the papers.
Sarah calmly pushed the court document across the counter. Jake glanced at it, then back at Lily, then at Ellie's unwavering gaze. He saw the protective stance, the undeniable bond, the quiet strength in Lily's eyes that hadn't been there before. He saw Henderson watching from across the street. Whatever claim he thought he had seemed to wither under the weight of their reality. Jake, muttering, avoiding eye contact. Yeah, well, just wanted to see she was okay. Looks like she is. I won't cause no trouble. And with that, he turned and walked away, disappearing back into the gray Ruston City drizzle. It wasn't a neat resolution. No tearful reunion or dramatic denouement. Just a weary acknowledgement, a shadow receding, leaving behind a fragile sense of closure. The confrontation, draining as it was, seemed to galvanize Ellie and Sarah. The temporary guardianship wasn't enough. Lily needed permanent security.
Ellie, it's time. We need to make this permanent. Formal adoption. It will give Lily a legal identity, a last name, full rights. It will protect her, protect you, from anyone like Jake showing up again.
Looking at Lily, then back at Sarah, nodding slowly, yes. Okay. Let's do it. Let's make it official.
The adoption process itself was another journey through paperwork and courtrooms, but this time, it felt different. It wasn't a battle against the system, but a process with it, guided by Sarah, supported by Henderson's signed affidavit and letters from Lily's teachers. The day they stood before the judge, Ellie's hand trembled as she signed the final papers. She thought of all the forms she hadn't had for Lily, the missing pieces of identity. Now this signature felt like anchoring Lily securely to the world, to her. Judge, voice kind Eleanor Vance, the court finds you a suitable and loving guardian. The petition for adoption is granted. Congratulations, Ms. Vance. And Lily Vance. Lily threw her arms around Ellie's neck, burying her face in her shoulder, clinging tight. No words were needed. The legal act simply affirmed the truth that had existed between them for years. They were mother and daughter. Life settled into a new rhythm. Lily Vance, armed with an official last name and a growing confidence, navigated the challenges of high school. She wasn't the most popular kid, didn't have the fanciest clothes, but she had a quiet determination that earned respect. She volunteered at the community center library on weekends, recommending books to younger kids. She excelled in English, her essays still winning accolades, though now she signed them proudly. Lily Vance. Ellie watched her daughter blossom, a quiet peace settling within her own heart. The diner miraculously stabilized. The worst of the downturn had passed, and while Ruston City still bore its scars, Ellie's Eats had become a neighborhood fixture, known for decent coffee and Ellie's no-nonsense warmth. Regulars knew their story, in vague terms at least, and offered a quiet respect that felt more valuable than any surge in profits. Ellie found herself smiling more, the lines around her eyes softening slightly. The ghosts of her past still whispered sometimes, but they no longer consumed her. She had Lily. She had the diner. She had found her footing. Lily graduated high school on a bright June afternoon. Ellie sat in the audience at the school auditorium, squeezed between Sarah Jenkins and a surprisingly misty-eyed Mr. Henderson. When Lily's name was called, Ellie's applause was heartfelt, tears tracing paths down her cheeks unnoticed.
Later, holding her diploma, I decided, Ellie. City College. They have a good nursing program. I want to help people. Like you did. Like Sarah did. And I want to stay close.
Beaming, oh, Lily. That's perfect. Absolutely perfect. Our girl's going to college. Going to be a nurse.
Knew she had it in her. Smart kid. Good head on her shoulders. Unlike some people around here.
His gaze flickered towards the street outside the diner where Brenda was sweeping her sidewalk with unnecessary vigor, pointedly ignoring the small celebration happening inside Ellie's Eats. Her bitterness remained, a sour note in the neighborhood's quiet hum, but it felt increasingly irrelevant, overshadowed by the hard-won peace Ellie and Lily had forged. A finality settled over them, not an ending but a transition. The storm had passed, the major battles fought and won. The future, once a terrifying void, now stretched before Lily, filled with possibility. A future forged in the fires of an uncertain past, embraced with the unwavering strength of a love that had chosen to stay.
Softly, looking at Ellie across a table back at the diner, it feels solid now, Ellie. Real.
Reaching across, covering Lily's hand with her own, always was real, kiddo. Always was. The papers just caught up.
The gentle strumming of a guitar begins, underscoring the quiet sense of peace and accomplishment, hinting at the chapters yet to unfold. The papers just caught up. That simple phrase, spoken in the quiet aftermath of the adoption hearing, held the weight of years. The legal ink merely traced the lines of a reality already deeply etched into their lives. A reality forged not by blood, but by choice, by resilience, by the stubborn refusal to look away on a grim afternoon in Ruston City. And so Lily Vance, armed with a name that was legally hers and a future that felt increasingly possible, stepped forward. The journey wasn't over, not by a long shot. Ruston City didn't suddenly transform into a land of opportunity. The grit remained, the economic struggles persisted, the shadows lingered in the corners. But something fundamental had shifted. The narrative wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about building. Years pass, as they inevitably do, even in cities that feel stuck in time. Walk down Mercer and Elm today, and you'll still see the hollowed-out skeleton of the old textile mill overlooking the intersection. The traffic still snarls, the horns still bark. But look closer. Ellie's Eats is still there, wedged between the same storefronts, though the sign above the door is newer, the windows cleaner. Inside, the aroma of coffee is richer. Mingling with the scent of freshly baked pies Ellie somehow finds time to make now. Ellie herself is older, the lines around her eyes testaments to the years, but the deep weariness seems to have lifted, replaced by a quiet calm, a hard-won peace. She still runs the diner with brisk efficiency, but there's a softness around her edges now. Most afternoons, you might find Mr. Henderson nursing a cup of coffee at the counter, his gruffness now comfortably familiar, a fixture like the faded photos tacked behind the register.
Setting down his mug, still make the best coffee on this block, Ellie. Only reason I keep coming back.
Smiling faintly, keep telling yourself that, Henderson. You just like complaining about the city with someone who'll listen.
Chuckles, a rough sound, maybe so. Maybe so. Good to see the place doing all right. Good to see you doing all right. You earned it.
Ellie nods, a simple acknowledgement. Peace isn't about the absence of scars. It's about learning to live with them, finding stability amidst the enduring roughness of the world. And Lily? Lily Vance didn't just survive. She thrived. City College led to a nursing degree, earned through long hours of study sandwiched between part-time jobs. She works now at Ruston General, the sprawling, often overwhelmed city hospital. Her shifts are long, the work demanding, dealing daily with the city's broken bodies and sometimes broken spirits. But her touch is gentle, her presence calming, her eyes holding an empathy born not of textbooks, but of lived experience. Sometimes on her days off she stops by the diner, shedding her nurse's uniform for comfortable jeans, sliding into a booth to share lunch with Ellie.
Rough shift last night, Ellie. Had a kid come in, reminded me a little of, well, you know. Scared. Alone.
Reaching across the table, briefly touching Lily's hand, you were good with him, I bet. You know what that feels like. You know how to be kind. That matters more than anything.
Learned from the best. You know. I still think about that day. At the intersection. You didn't have to stop. Nobody else did.
Looks out the window, a distant expression in her eyes. Wasn't much of a choice, Lily. Not really. Just couldn't walk away. Sometimes life just puts something, someone, right in your path. Ignoring it feels worse than getting involved. Didn't have much back then. Still don't, compared to some. But we had each other. That was always enough. More than enough.
Softly, more than enough.
Their life isn't a fairy tale. There's no sudden fortune, no escape to a gentler world. It's a life built day by day, grounded in the realities of Ruston City, sustained by the quiet strength of their chosen bond. It's a testament to resilience, not just Lily's resilience in overcoming her past, but Ellie's resilience in opening her carefully guarded heart, in choosing connection over the safety of solitude. It's a story about the quiet power of kindness in environments that often breed indifference, about how family isn't always defined by bloodlines, but by the conscious act of showing up, of staying put, of choosing to nurture life in stony ground. It's about embracing the past, not as a weight that drags you down, but as the foundation upon which a future can be painstakingly forged. What happened that day at the crossroads of Mercer and Elm wasn't dramatic in the grand scheme of Ruston City's struggles. It was one small act of courage, one person choosing not to look away. But those small acts, those moments of unexpected compassion, can create the most profound echoes. They ripple outwards, changing not just individual lives, but the very texture of a place, leaving behind a quiet legacy of hope, grounded in the tough, unyielding reality of simply choosing to care. Optional outro music starts gentle, reflective. Thank you for joining us for Ruston Echoes. If this story resonated with you, please consider leaving a rating or review wherever you get your podcasts. Your support helps us continue to share stories about connection, resilience, and the quiet strength found in unexpected places. Join us next time for another story. Until then, take care.